Hello, you're listening to Ending Physician Overwhelm, and I'm your host, Dr. Megan Mello. I'm a physician and a life coach for physicians and other professionals. In this podcast, we look at why, as physicians, we often get stuck in feelings of overwhelm, anxiety, and burnout, and how we can break out of toxic thought patterns. My hope is that each episode gives you an opportunity to heal and get more clear on how you want to show up in your life and your work. And now, let's get started. Well, hello, my friends, and welcome to another episode. I have another special guest with me today, the amazing Dr. Lara Hochman, aka the medical matchmaker. Dr. Hochman is a family medicine physician and physician advocate, and she is the CEO and founder of Happy Day Health, a boutique physician matchmaking agency where she matches doctors with well-run, physician-owned private practices where they can avoid burnout and enjoy practicing medicine again. All right, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me here.
Yes, I'm so excited to talk to you today. So we're going to dive right in. And in the coaching world, people talk about becoming the kind of coach that they needed a few years earlier when they were really struggling. So I'm wondering if you will share the story of burnout amidst your clinic being bought up by a large hospital system.
Yeah, so I was in a private practice and working what we all know we do as physicians. I was working hard, charting at night, charting on weekends, being on call after hours and getting plenty of calls and I had two very young kids at home, so I was pretty burned out. The clinic itself actually was great to the physicians. My contract was very fair. But at one point, the clinic was bought out, the practice was bought by a large hospital system. And at that point, I spent a little bit of time deciding if I wanted to join them at all. And what I realized was, I love practicing medicine and I love my patients, and I couldn't imagine leaving them. And so I figured, yes, let me speak to them and see if maybe I can go super part time so I can still see my patients, still work in the practice that I enjoyed working in. So when the time came to speak with them, they they were telling me all the great things about working for their large system, and when I asked what their non-compete was, they totally glossed over the question. And so again, I had to ask, and what's your non-compete? And eventually they answered and they told me this extremely large number for 2 years. And I said, well, I'm not going to sign anything that has that non-compete. And they did not hear me. And they kept talking. And I kept saying, I'm not signing that non-compete. What else can you offer? And eventually, at the end of the very long meeting, one of the people in the meeting said to me, well, just thinking outside the box, what if you work for us in a different capacity, like as a 1099 or as a something else? And so we ended the meeting saying, okay, you send me all the different things about the different options and I'll pick one. So there were 3 different types of contracts, which was already surprising. And I said, great, I'll pick the second option. And they said, wait, you don't want the first option? Like, surprised, even though I had said maybe 10 or 15 times, I'm not signing your non-compete.
Yeah.
And they just didn't hear it. And I ended up actually not signing because the second option had an intellectual property clause that pretty much said that everything I do belongs to them ever. And that I agree to their policies and procedures, which may change from time to time. And they wouldn't negotiate that at all. And I even had a lawyer rewrite it in a very fair way that said, this company that I own, which was not Happy Day Health, this is another company that I own and did own back then. And the lawyer wrote in something like, I will, this company belongs to me. It's called self-recovery. Self-recovery belongs to me. They do not own self-recovery. I will not work on it on their equipment during their time, on their premises. and just a big carve out for this one particular company only, and they still
Mhm.
wouldn't sign that.
Yeah.
So, I'm not going to give my company to them, and I'm not taking that risk. So that's when I walked away. And
Mhm.
and at that time, I felt pretty hopeless about the future of medicine, and I just thought medicine was going in the wrong direction. And so when I walked away from that contract, I didn't plan on going back to medicine. And so I had a lovely summer off with my kids, thinking, I guess I'm a stay-at-home mom now. I used to hate recruiters, and I'm a little embarrassed about the way I used to feel about them. But I did get a message from a recruiter and about a practice that was hiring, and it sounded really good. So I was curious, and I contacted them, and they drew me in, and turns out I actually loved it there. So I went in
Mhm.
PRN thinking, I still had that apprehension about getting back into medicine. So I joined PRN. And after my first day, I was sold. I was like, this is it.
Mhm.
This is amazing. And so I ended up going on with them permanently and loving it, loving it. And it absolutely, it was one of the big pivotal moments that restored my faith in the future of medicine. It was an innovative company and working similar to the DPC model. Amazing colleagues, incredible patients. And I just remembered why I went into medicine.
Yeah. Oh, I think that's so powerful. I think many of us have had the experience of, these situations where we're handed these contracts and people say, oh, it's no big deal. Oh, yes, there's a little non-compete in there. And the intellectual property, and maybe you get offered some money here or there for a takeout or takeover, I should say. And I think a lot of us just have this mentality of, well, it must be okay. Well, everybody else is signing it. It must, I'll just sign it too, because, I certainly need this job. So I think that's just, um, it's just so remarkable to hear, people really talk about, no, I really thoroughly looked at this and I really decided for myself, that's not okay. I'm not going to be, kind of controlled in that way.
Yeah, and it was somewhat isolating because I didn't know anyone else that had done that at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And the other physician in the practice said exactly what you said. Well, I had to, and I just wanted to scream from the rooftops, no, you don't have
You
to.
don't
And
have
all the thousands of doctors
to.
in the system, if none of you had signed it, they would be without a doctor. So
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's so good. That's so good. Okay. And so you were able to sort of step back in after some lovely time off with your kids, and get back to really loving medicine. And so what did that show you in terms of, kind of the place as being an important factor in sort of how you work and how you think of a career in medicine?
it was huge. And it even redefined how I think of work life balance. So, up until that point, I had been chasing this ephemeral work life balance idea and
Mhm.
never quite getting there. And I tried
Mhm.
working part time, even more part time, working, 2 full days, working 3 half days. I mean, I tried everything and I never quite reached that work life balance until I joined this place. And no matter what hours I worked, when I came home, I was happy and I was
Mm.
able to be present with my kids. And I happily increased my hours because I loved being there. I loved the work that I was doing. And then when I went home, I loved being home and I loved being with my family as well. And so it redefined the way I see work life balance, not so much as how much time you spend in each thing, but how much satisfaction you get in that.
Mhm.
And so that was, huge for me because I finally had that work life balance and I realized it wasn't about the time. It was about, work was a great break from my kids and kids were a great break from my work, but I really enjoyed each one of those things.
Mm. Yeah.
And so, that was huge. And being in an environment that was supportive and that supported me. And, there were some people there who saw qualities in me that I didn't know I had, and they really developed me as a person. That was huge. I felt like I had a voice. There was a policy about they did a good job with policies that nurses could follow where they wouldn't need a physician order. And I noticed a mistake in one of the policies because one of the it was the UTI algorithm had changed because of the resistance to antibiotics. And, I knew who to tell, and I told them, and they changed it. Or, if there was a policy about medication refills, I was able to change that. And
Mhm.
it was great. Or if I needed extra time, I had some patients who had some very serious issues that needed extra time. I didn't even not need to ask anyone. I could just block it. End of story. So that was really huge. I mean, that showed me how important our time is with patients, and how important just where we work is, and how supportive the environment is.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like there was a lot of opportunity for autonomy, which, many of us have lost, especially in, kind of employed roles in sort of big, um, big institutions where there's a lot of drive towards no standard, everyone gets the same amount of time and it's too difficult to customize. Um, was there anything else about that practice that really stood out as making the difference for you in terms of feeling like you could love medicine again?
Yeah, it was actually during my orientation on my first day of work. I sat down with my boss and the account manager, and I asked them questions about, what do you do in this instance or that instance? And the answer was consistently, you do what's right for the patient.
Mm.
And it seems so obvious, but
But
it was
refreshing.
very refreshing and surprising. And it's surprising that it's surprising.
Yeah.
And when I interviewed physicians to join our company as well, that, similar questions, and I gave the same answer, you do what's right for the patient. And it's sad that that's even a question. How is that even a question? Because in the big systems, that's not always the option. The option is you do what you're told, or you do what
Mhm.
the insurance companies tell you to do, and
Mhm.
not use your clinical judgment. We trust you.
Yeah. That's so good. And so now you have this wonderful business where you help doctors find their way to new jobs where they can be happy and practice medicine the way they want to. As you had the opportunity to tell us more about how you got started and where you're at now.
Yeah, the initial idea that something had to be done was when I read that contract from the large hospital system.
Mhm.
I knew I wanted to do something, but I didn't know what. And then after I joined this company that I really enjoyed, I recruited quite a few physicians to join us in that company. And some of them came from pretty bad situations, and they were so happy. And I totally get it, because that was me as well. And that was what I was hoping to do by recruiting them to the company. And then word spread. And so I started helping some friends in town do the same thing. And so it just organically started from there. And I realized, gosh, I can make a huge impact by helping doctors get out of these large abusive systems and into practices. And hopefully, if I can do this enough, then the hospitals will wake up and start treating their doctors better. So, right now the practices have a very hard time attracting physicians because they don't have all the shiny objects that the hospitals have. But the hospitals are burning physicians out, and not all of them, but many are
Mhm.
burning physicians out, and doctors are unhappy and leaving medicine entirely, when really it's just needed. You just need a change of scenery. Um, so I've started doing this where I help doctors find physician-owned private practices, because I believe that if a physician is running the practice and they're practicing in the practice, then if you need some change in the practice, they're going to feel that need too. And
Mm.
of course, that's not across the board. There's good and bad everything. But as a rule, I think physicians went into medicine to help people. And so, we're the ones that should be deciding how to best do that. And especially if you're practicing medicine as well, you're going to want it to work for you. So you're going to do the same things for your employees, of course.
Yeah. Awesome. Tell us a little bit about, kind of the process. So if somebody comes to you, a doctor comes to you, and they say, I really feel like I need some help. I need a different job. I don't know what to do. What does it look like for them?
So it depends on the person, of course. Usually, people will reach out to me either through my website or through LinkedIn, or I actually don't know how, but some people find my email address, and I may have given it to them. I don't know, But I get, people reach out to me all the time and we have a conversation and I listen to what's working for them, what's not working for them in their current practice. And from there, it depends on a lot of things. So I have practices that I'm working with myself. Those ones I've vetted and I believe they treat their physicians well. If they would fit within one of those practices, then I can have them interview with one of the practices I'm working with. If I don't, then it can go one of two ways. Of course, I need to know what they're looking for. And once I know, then I keep my eyes wide open. So if I know that they're looking for something very specific, then I just wait for that to come up, or, I can potentially go out and find it, but things are always popping up. So, I will speak with a doctor and then 3 months later, just recently, actually, I have a doctor interviewing today at a practice. And this was a physician that I spoke with 3 months ago, and then her perfect practice popped up. Mm. So either, we can wait and see and wait for the perfect practice, or I have a network of, I've joined a network of recruiters. And so they have thousands of jobs available that are not necessarily posted anywhere. And so, while I may not work for a hospital system, those jobs are out there. So I have some doctors who want to climb the corporate ladder or who want to be in hospitals. Those aren't going to be the practices that I work with. But I have those available, and I have that where I can kind of direct people to the right place. So it depends on the person and what they're looking for and what their timeline is. If they're willing to wait for the perfect practice, then we wait. And when something comes along, we pounce. And then they're the first one to find out about the practice. If they're, just really itching to get out, then I have other opportunities potentially. And of course, it depends on what their specialty is and where they're located.
Yeah, great. And you also do work directly with the practices themselves, the private practices. And I'd love to hear a little bit about, sort of how you work on that side of things, because I think that's really unique.
Yeah, I work with the practices. First, I get to know them pretty well, to get to know who they are, what they stand for, what is their culture, and what are they looking for. Because if I'm finding them a physician, I have to know who will fit within that practice. So I get to know them pretty well. And then, I'm there as a resource for them to know how to structure their contract in a way that's fair for the physician, or how to attract physicians, or how to really show what's best for them. So I do speak with them a little bit, before the interview. I say, this is the physician, and, I tell them a little bit about them. And I also help them figure out how not to lose their candidates. So very often, we're busy, we're physicians, and especially if we're running a practice, we'll spend a lot of time spinning our wheels, especially since we're perfectionists. And physicians can get lost, candidates can get lost that way, because in the interim, they found another position. So I spend a lot of time trying to, ride people's butts and say, come on, we got to get moving. We got to get moving. We're going to lose them. If you love them, then let's get moving. Next step.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's great. That's great. So I think I've heard a lot there. I was kind of ask you about, sort of what's the difference between working with you and working with a conventional recruiter. And I hear, not only from, that practice side of really sort of helping to move them along and help them to create an attractive offer for the physicians, but also, for the physicians themselves, of like you having access to these networks, as well as, really their best interest in matching them with the successful practice.
Yeah. And I do spend time speaking with the physicians. A lot of doctors know what they want or don't know what they want, in which case I can help out with that as well. But if they know what they want, I'll spend a little bit of time before the interview speaking with them about how to really ask the right questions, what to look out for. Because ultimately it's their decision. I'm not just going to plunk someone into a practice. But yeah, I spend a little bit of time helping them really get what they need out of the interview to make sure it's the right fit for them as well.
Yeah.
And showcase what makes them the best.
I know a lot of people will ask, how much does this cost for the physician?
It doesn't cost the physician anything. The practices that I work with are the ones that pay me. So please reach out to me if you're a doctor and you're unhappy. You've got nothing to lose.
Yeah. I think that's such a tremendous service that you're providing for people. So I'm so glad that we get to talk about that today. For my listeners who are out there and they might be feeling, stuck in their job, they might be feeling overwhelmed and burned out and, thinking really, I don't know what to do now. What advice would you give them? What do you want them to hear right now?
I want them to know you're not stuck. You're not trapped. Even if you have a 2 year, 25-mile non compete, you're not trapped. There's options. Um, we have the fear of the known and the fear of the unknown. And often it's the fear of the unknown that keeps us stuck. So if you're miserable, you can try to change what's first figure out what it is, and you can try to change what it is in your practice that's holding you back or that's making you unhappy. But ultimately, if those things don't change, jump ship. It's not worth it. It's not worth it to you. It's not worth it for your family. You can, write out your non-compete by doing telemedicine, or if you want to travel and see the world, do that. But you're not trapped, and it's certainly not worth your happiness and time with your family to be in a position where you're really unhappy.
Yeah, I think that's such important news because you're absolutely right that I think so many people feel like, well, I have to do this. I have to do this job in this place in this way. And they feel like they don't have a choice, right? But we do have a choice. We may need some help in figuring out exactly what those choices are. And I know I've heard you talk about sometimes those non-competes are binding and sometimes they're not so much binding and can't be enforced. But also just to really, really open up our thinking about what are my options legitimately, right? Because I think a lot of people just imagine I'm going to be out on the streets. I can't support my family. People will think that I've gone crazy if I leave, this job with benefits where I'm surviving.
Yeah, barely.
Yeah. And we don't need to survive, right? We survived the hard times in medical school and in residency. And I think so many times we just carry that mindset with us of like, well, I survived those things, so I guess I need to survive this too. And this is our life.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
another thing I see holding people back is our responsibility to our patients. I know
Mm-hmm.
for me that was one of the hardest things about leaving practice. And
Absolutely.
I know a lot of us feel that way, where we feel responsible for our patients, but they're human beings and they don't want us to be unhappy either. If they
Mm-hmm.
knew what was going on under the hood, they would absolutely tell us to leave.
Yeah.
And I think we feel so responsible for our patients, and we feel very deeply for them, and so it makes sense, but they'll be okay. And what you've done for your patient at this point, you've done it already. And so
Mm-hmm.
when they have a new physician come on, this new physician will be able to help them in other ways. And so, we feel this responsibility, and we feel like we're the only ones that can take care of them, but really, they're just going to be taken care of in a whole new way. And that's not necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah. Shake it up a little bit. Oh, I am so glad that we had a chance to talk. So thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me. This was great.
Yeah.
And thanks for the
Yeah.
work you do.
Oh, sure. And let us know where can people find you? I'm going to put in a plug here. I want you to pay special attention to the Instagram handle because you need to be following Dr. Hochman on Instagram. But please tell us where we can find you.
All right, well, I'll start with Instagram then. I don't know what it is. I think it's Happy Day
Happy Day
MD.
MD. Happy Day MD.
And that's on TikTok too, Happy Day MD. The best places to find me are LinkedIn. My name is Lara Hochman, MD. And my website is www.happydayhealth.co. And those are the two best places to reach me as well. You can reach me through LinkedIn or through my website. There's a little contact form on there.
And we'll have links to all of those in the show notes so people can find you. Dr. Hochman, thank you so much for joining me today. It was a real pleasure to talk to you.
Thanks for having me. This was great.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Goodbye for now. Thank you you for listening to Ending Physician Overwhelm. If you've learned something today or felt moved, please share this episode with a colleague and be sure to like and subscribe so that you don't miss an episode yourself. If you'd like to know more about me and my coaching practice, you can find more information at www.healthierforgood.com. Until next time, take care.